Right, ladies and gentlemen, actually very interesting video today. Let's start off first with the news story of Pandor. But before I do, can I yet again remind you, if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. As you know, it really does help. So what exactly did Pandor say? Well, here, you can watch it yourself.
There is nothing worse in an organization or in a country than a leader who has no solution. We can't be asking someone else, how do we solve this? The people are looking to us to resolve it.
Now, for me, this is a very interesting clip because Pandor says there's nothing worse than a useless leader, and we agree. The ANC is useless, which means that there's nothing worse than an ANC leader. She then says that the people are looking to them to solve the issues of South Africa. But this I call bullshit. Now, the reason I call bullshit is because the ANC caused the problems in the first place. Now that they've caused the problems, they're saying that the people are looking to them to solve the problems. We are not looking to the ANC to solve the problems that they caused because they don't know how to fix them. So our suggestion, ANC, is VOETSEK and VOETSEK hard. Now, lucky for us, there was a poll that showed that the ANC's support had fallen below 30%. But I didn't actually say in my actual video yesterday where that poll came from, because to be frank, I wasn't actually sure. But it turned out it was actually a leaked DA internal poll that claimed that the ANC support had collapsed to 29%, down from 40% in the 2024 elections. Now, for those of you who don't know, this internal poll reported that the DA was now at 28%, almost neck and neck nationally with the ANC. In Swane, the DA was at 48%, with the DA at 27%, Johannesburg, the DA at 40%, with the ANC at 23%, and in Cape Town, the DA was at 61%, the ANC was at 19%, and the PA had made a rapid rise at 9%. Now, in terms of the political parties, the MK party was scoring at 11%, the EFF at 8%, and IFP at 3%. But Helen Zille, the Federal Chair of the DA, dismissed the poll, saying that the sample size was too small and that the margin of error was too high. So according to her, the poll wasn't actually credible. She does, however, say that it reflects the ANC's worst polling numbers in history months before the municipal elections. But she goes on to further say that the ANC generally tends to do better in the elections than the pollings generally say they will. In other words, the ANC puts a lot of focus in elections. They do forms of electioneering in order to boost those numbers, and that means that they do ultimately do slightly better than expected. But in any case, it does still tell a story of the ANC and an ANC that's in decline. Moving then swiftly on, the Board of Health Funders, the BHF, has escalated its fight against the government's NHR Act by taking the matter to the Constitutional Court. Now, the BHF argues that Parliament failed in its constitutional duty in relation to the Act by not allowing proper public participation before the passing of the law. Now, to that, I would say, yeah, but the government doesn't really care about public participation, because even where the public says we don't like this, if it's in relation to the ANC's ideology, they do it anyway. So public participation is this thing that was required due to a constitutional court judgment, but let's be honest, the ANC use it as a tick box exercise to say that we've done it, but they don't really care what you say anyway. In any case, the BHF has also raised other issues, such as no clarity on what healthcare services NHI will cover. And that's because the basic idea is, well, everything except nothing, because they don't actually have the money. Which leads on to the next one, which is that there is no up-to-date financial modelling, with the last costings being done in 2010 before state capture, COVID-19 and the economic downturn. Now, this is an issue that frequently gets raised in terms of the NHI, and the ANC has still not got any explanation as to how they're actually going to fund it. Now, they also have no explanation of the role of the private medical aids or provincial health departments, and this is because the NHI is meant to basically ban the private medical aid sector. We know this because there's a whole clause around the health minister now saying that it won't exist anymore. And Parliament did a tick box exercise with its ANC majority. Well, that's what they claim. And that's, to be honest, well, how Parliaments has always worked. The ANC always use it as a tick box exercise with their majority in order to do basically whatever they want. That's why Ramaphosa signed so many bills prior to the last administration ending, because they knew full well they weren't going to have a majority in this administration and wouldn't just be able to do what they wanted. So all the radical stuff they signed in the last administration when they actually had a majority. Now, critics say that the NHI is a blank check, with massive tax increases likely, but no plan for implementation. And we've seen some suggestions are that even VAT could go up to 21%. And if you saw the last budget where everybody freaked out over like 0.5%, how they're going to raise it like this, I don't know. But in any case, the BHF is not alone, with groups like Solidarity and the Health Funders Association and the Hospital Association of South Africa also challenging the law. Now, as you'll know, President Ramaphosa's decision to sign the bill in May 2024, right before the elections, is also under a separate legal review with the Constitutional Court. Now, in other news, which is unconnected but really should be viewed in light of everything we've just said about the NHI, the Healthcare Minister, Aaron, also known as Moron, has confirmed that South Africa's healthcare system does not discriminate between documented and undocumented patients. He says that the claims that foreigners are responsible for the collapsing healthcare services, a narrative put forward by parties such as Action SA and the PA, are all false. He says that the real causes for the collapse of South Africa's healthcare system is budget cuts, infrastructure challenges, and shortages of doctors and nurses. Now, when we look at the budget cuts, we note that South Africa doesn't have any money, and that's why they haven't been able to invest in infrastructure. Infrastructure challenges are because South Africa has a habit of stealing the money that we do allocate, and the shortages of doctors and nurses are because, well, the health department doesn't pay them. And even where we have a surplus, we just say, well, we can't afford to pay you. So as a result, many of them immigrate. Now, according to Moron, he cited Section 27 of the Constitution, which guarantees health care for all. And that's why he says the South African healthcare service will even provide universal health care. I mean, I thought we didn't have that, even to undocumented migrants, who, in other words, illegal aliens. And this puts him at odds with groups like Operation Doodler and politicians like Gator McKenzie, who wants migrants banned from hospitals, because the taxes can barely pay for the legal people in the country, let alone all the illegal people. Those people should maybe go back to places like Zimbabwe, where they collapse their own healthcare services through various forms of state capture like the NHR and all their other commie rubbish. Now, if you weren't already worried about the way that NHR could be looted, I would draw your attention to the next news article. And this is that the Government Pensions Administration Agency, which manages nearly 3 trillion in pension assets, is embroiled in a 1.2 billion rand procurement scandal. And I hear you, ladies and gentlemen, you're shocked like Cyril when he finds out that every one of his ANC people have stolen the money. In any case, the Finance Minister, Enoch Godongwana, has suspended the CEO of that fund after revelations of irregular tenders, including a 1 billion rand lease for a head office in Pretoria that didn't exist, nice grift if you can get it, and 239 million rand in suspect contracts linked to the same developer, who never developed anything. Now, the entire executive team is implicated, and the team itself has been accused of intimidation against its auditors and whistleblowers because, as per usual, the ANC doesn't like their good old habits being made public. Now, Treasury has taken control of the agency in order to stabilize this operation and restore trust. Now, that's kind of part of the story, but the other part of the story is they know that in the government sector, if you start stealing all the wages, in other words, all the pensions, you're going to have a riot, a full-on riot, and then you're going to lose the support of your unions. And we all know how much the ANC loves their unions. But we are reminded, if they can steal the pension money, what exactly are they going to do to the NHR pot? And this, ladies and gentlemen, was why everybody was nervous around the NHR in the first place. You cannot give the government, no matter what their intentions claim to be, any access to the money, because they will loot it dry. Everybody with a brain cell knows this. They will loot it dry, buy a new house, buy a new car, and when you need a cancer treatment, well, they're going to have no budget. Because remember, just like we've already heard in the previous story, well, infrastructure challenges, shortages of doctors, and budget cuts, it must be austerity. I'm sure it's Wati's fault, or maybe it's America's fault. I don't know. You know all the rubbish that they'll come out with. But the reality is it will be, well, theft. And when you try to hold them accountable for theft, we'll go back to the first news story with Pandor, who will then say, yeah, but we're there to fix it and nobody really wants a useless leader. They want us to fix it. No, we don't. We want you to VOETSEK because we wouldn't trust you with a box of Chappie's bubblegum because you probably all eat it all and then try to give us used bubblegum and say, I don't know, you ate it. So moving then on to a final news story, and this is the news story around Julius Malema. Now, Julius Malema was speaking at the Nigerian Bar Association Conference. Yep, I'm assured that that's actually a thing. And he called for one African president, one currency, one parliament, and one army. He says that the United Africa could challenge the US dollar and global powers like America, China, and Russia. Now, it was very interesting actually listening to the talk because he said, we can't look to Beijing and all those other countries to sort our problems. We need to look internally in Africa. And I would be very tempted to say, well, he has a point. I'd say only slightly tempted because let's use the very country that he's referring to, Nigeria. And that is, well, in Nigeria, they have a Muslim population that is openly committing genocide against a Christian population. And they're at war silently, not really officially, but there are mass murders occurring in that country right now. And everybody else in Africa is mum. They just don't talk about it. In fact, the whole world says it's really not that important, even though it kind of is. Now, if that's occurring in the very country that he's talking, what do you think's happening everywhere else? I mean, Rwanda don't exactly get on very well with Congo, now do they? So how exactly are you going to have one president and one currency and one parliament and one army? Freak, I don't know. Half the continent don't like each other. I mean, Sudan's full of Islamists everywhere. I mean, why the hell would you want to do anything with Sudan? The place is... In any case, Julius then went on further and slammed xenophobia, saying unemployment in South Africa is due to white monopoly capital and multinational corporations, not African migrants. And to that, I would say, you're a freaking moron, my friend. The reason that we have high unemployment in South Africa is because we have nobody being entrepreneurial. The very people who should be entrepreneurial emigrate, and all the people being funded by the state to be entrepreneurial are using the money in order to buy lots of nice houses, lots of nice cars, and Johnny Walker Black Label. They are not creating the factories, and they are not sitting there creating the services that are required in order to get employment. In fact, they're too busy looting the state rather than growing the state. Now, he urged South Africa and Nigeria to lead Africa's industrialization by building more factories, harmonizing trade and visa policies, and using Africa's mineral and energy wealth to end dependency on the West. And to that, I would say, Julius, it's not 1950s. We don't need big factories full of workers. These days, you can build a factory in a country and basically have the entire thing staffed by robots. Yes, robots. Can you imagine it? And these robots build everything without people. People are not required. Now, you see, once you understand that, you can build a massive factory with less than 50 workers. And all those workers are going to be doing is maintaining the robots. It's not 1950 anymore. We don't have sweatshop factories, only in China. And even in China, a lot of those factories, they just reindustrialize and they build them with robots. My God, keep up with the times. Please, use your brain. In any case, he invoked Gaddafi's old version of Africa's unity and positioned Nigeria and South Africa as continental giants. Well, South Africa was a continental giant at one point. At this point, it's the fastest deindustrializing country in Africa, and it's all due to government ineptness, all due to government incompetence. In any case, this is just my views. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Until tomorrow, bye.